Equalizer 3, starring Denzel Washington, is here. If you've seen Equalizer 1, you know the type of gravitas that Denzel Washington is capable of. Equalizer 2 was something of a disappointment. Equalizer 3 delivers. It is, and I know that's like a cliche thing that critics say. I can't believe I just said that, but it does deliver. This is a hard R-rated movie. The violence at times made me turn away, or certainly made me squeamish for a couple of things that happened. Okay, but it's a very simple story. His character has taken out a bunch of bad guys that are dealing drugs. They're bringing in drugs to this port in Italy, sneaking them in, tons of cash, takes them out, and he goes to a hideaway effectively to recover from some wounds during this opening sequence. And he's taken care of by a doctor at this small town, this little villa, if you will, in Italy. He ends up becoming friends with a lot of the people that are the locals. And the locals are very kind to him. They are just, they're kind to him. They befriend him. He meets the local police captain. He meets all the people in this town. But the town is being bullied by some Italian mobsters. And it reaches a breaking point, or at least a breaking point for Denzel Washington's character, whose name escapes me. Why can't I think of his name? Okay. It's what?
I forgot to.
Yeah, it's not. Okay, the entire cast is here, except not the name of his character. He plays what? Robert McCall.
Just call him the Godfather.
I mean, they don't really his name is Robert in the film. I don't know. They don't really say it all that much.
Well, Denzel's name is Roberto in the film.
Roberto. There you go.
Yeah.
They call him Roberto. So what happens is, as Denzel Washington's character observes these bullies terrorize the people in the town, reaches a breaking point, and he very calmly begins to take them out. Simple story. I don't want to ruin it or go into any details. There'll be no spoilers in this review. We're not talking spoilers, but let me just say this. The movie's called The Equalizer 3, but it is a Western. Structurally speaking, in terms of a story, it's a stranger comes from out of town. There's a sheriff in this town. The sheriff is being bullied by the bad guys. And the stranger from out of town takes care of business in the most hyper, over-the-top, violent way you could possibly imagine. So it's like a mashup of a part Western, modern action thriller with Denzel Washington, mixed with a spaghetti Western, mixed with a mafia film, mixed with an R-rated Batman movie. The third act, without ruining anything, is effectively an hard R-rated Batman film. I will not go into any specifics about exactly what happens in the third act. It just felt so frightening because you've got these characters, the bad guys, the mobsters, these horrible drug dealers, who are just vicious and brutal to the townspeople, that are then terrorized by what lies in the shadows. It felt very much, the third act felt like R-rated Batman as you would read in a comic book, like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. I loved Equalizer 3. I plan to see it again. I thought it was fun, and it's always there's joy that comes from seeing evil people get what they deserve. I love The Equalizer 3, strongly recommend it. But at its heart, it's a Western mixed with a hard R-rated Batman. And I'd love to see this. It's Antoine Fuqua is the director, I believe. Mm-hmm. Did I say that right? Antoine Fuqua is the director. He is the director who said effectively, because if you look at his back catalog, you wouldn't. He makes movies in very different genres because he's trying to He wants to just try different genres. I love that as a filmmaker. Antoine Fuqua, if you look at his resume, he's not the type of filmmaker who makes a certain type of film always. He makes different types of movies. He made Magnificent Seven, which is a Western. So it doesn't surprise me that Equalizer 3. He also did Training Day, which is very good. And he made Emancipation. I don't think Alan and I really liked Emancipation. I think our review of it.
There are elements that I liked about it.
But there were elements that I liked, and it was a different type of movie. But he's a filmmaker who likes to stretch himself creatively. So really appreciate. I mean, I think he's amazingly talented. So strong recommendation from me for Equalizer 3. Alan, what did you think of it?
Yeah, definitely recommendation for me. I would agree with a lot of what you said, except to me, it wasn't a Western, it was a horror film. And it was a horror film taken from the viewpoint of the killer. If you pretend, we'll talk about Slaughterhouse in a moment, but if you pretend that the mob was a sorority, and the movie is basically going to the sorority in three steps, in three stages, and killing about a third of the house along the way. And the reason I say it's a horror film is because of the way they are killed. I mean, it's brutal. There are horror elements. There's one moment where someone is sitting there, and then the camera moves and a chair moves in front of the camera, and then when you see the person sitting there, Denzel's behind him. Those are very horror elements, and just the brutality, the dismemberments, the blood, the people die in very horrific ways, much like a horror film. And that's what this movie is. I'm watching this film with my hand over my eyes, just how gory it is. But I do have to bring up Dakota Fanning. We talked about actors having gravitas in roles, and in this movie, Denzel Washington had gravitas. You believed that this is a guy who he was. He was tough. When he would challenge the bad guys, basically saying, "I'm just giving you a warning," or "I'm giving you notification." I'm giving you 9 seconds. You believe it, but then you cut to Dakota Fanning, who leads a team of CIA agents to uncover what the mob is doing. She doesn't quite have the gravitas. In fact, we could talk about affirmative action if we want to, but it's a typical affirmative action story, and the thing is that Dakota Fanning has to play a role of leadership. And the way she does is she acts tough. She talks tough. And she doesn't quite have the gravitas in her performance to get us to believe that. And this is probably the weakness of the movie. I like nothing against Dakota Fanning. She's a great actress. But she just can't fake leadership like this at this stage of this character's career.
Right. Well, you brought up some things that I wasn't aware of. So yeah, you're right. You could see this as a horror film for sure. And her character was kind of weak, but she's not in it all that much, so she didn't ruin it for me. There's a little thread with her and a payoff at the end. Obviously, we're not going to discuss it, but it's not a big part of the film. But I can't. So I was like you. There are certain things that are like when Denzel Washington, when he says something. I mean, I forget. Also, he's a star. He is one of the last. He's
earned the gravitas here.
100%. He has earned it. Like he's like that. He has that gravitas that a Hollywood star has, and there's so few actors who have that now. Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of sad to see like where we are. It's like, yeah, there's just very few movie stars that are around. But yeah,
and it's not necessarily that that experience gives it to you. I mean, if you think about Henry Cavill as Superman, if you think about even Chris Hemsworth as Thor, they brought the early Thor. They brought that gravitas to those characters, and we knew nothing about them beforehand. So it's not like, you have to necessarily earn it over time, though it helps. I think Tom Hanks is an example of a person who earned his gravitas over time.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's very enjoyable, very satisfying, especially because they really build up how bad this mafia family is. I mean, there is a there is a scene right out of a horror movie. They've got the guy who's the head of the police department. They bring him in to kind of just tell him like, hey, shut the F up, do what we tell you to do. And they do something horrific to him and send him out. And it is like, it's horrifying. I mean, the audience was gasping during some of these moments of horror. I mean, it is just like super over the top, but I really enjoyed it. So strong recommendation from me. I mean, I would give it like an 8 out of 10 for the type of movie that it is. I don't know. How would you rate it, Alan?
7.5.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I have not seen the first 2 movies, but I did see the TV show.